Good morning, dear students. As you all know, that BNN College Bhiwandi has successfully planned revision lectures for TYB English literature students, uh, and all the different faculties from different colleges are taking efforts for these revisional lectures, and they are sharing their uh, very much expertise with all of you. Today, in this practice, I'm going to share my experience with the paper Literature and Gender. But before I start my presentation, I must acknowledge Shri Vijay Jadhav, President, and Shri Balakrishnan Kale, who is Executive President of Padma Shri Anna Saheb Jadhav Bharatiya Unnati Mandal. My sincere thanks go to Dr. Ashok Wag, who is Principal of BNN College. And last but not the least, Dr. Sudhip Nikam, sir, who is Head of the Department of English and Chairperson for the BOS for English Literature at Mumbai University. And my sincere thanks also go to Namrata Jadhav ma'am, who is always after me for this presentation, and I'm very happy to present my presentation before all of you. So let's talk about the paper Literature and Gender, which is for semester 6. This paper is divided into two parts. It means that there is a theory part, there is a practical part. Practical part is for 20 marks and theory part is for 80 marks. So already you must have submitted your projects into classrooms to your respective teachers based on the different topics from the syllabus. Now, the later part, that is of the theory, which is for 80 marks, the syllabus is in front of you. Unit number 1 is about schools of feminism, socialist and radical feminism. Then there are basic concepts related to feminism. Then unit number 2 is about poems, and unit number 3 is about plays. There are two plays, Mahesh Dattani's Tara and Lauren Hensberg's Racing in the Sun. But actually, you are supposed to prepare either Tara or a Racing in the Sun. The questions will be asked on both the plays, but you are supposed to write on a specific play. So let's start a presentation, that is social feminism. Let's understand what the concept it is. It rose in 1960s and sought to question the roots of oppression of women. As we all know that feminism is always aimed at the equality, justice, freedom in the gender biased society. The socialist feminists, they also have thought about the different kind of structures and the systems which are responsible for the extreme and utter exploitation of women. So according to these feminists, this operation is a combination of the various systems in terms of race, gender, sexuality, class, which are the various structures and the systems specifically, deliberately, intentionally created for the operation of women. So, socialist feminists believe that women have been oppressed across the societies, but only the nature of the operation is the different. But the oppression or the exploitation is everywhere through social system and through social structures. So these socialist feminists always attacked on different structures and systems which are responsible for the oppression for a long time of women. So one of the system is the patriarchy. At the same time, the capitalism. But both are going hand in hand for the operation of women for a long time in Western culture, in Western societies. So this feminism always criticized the patriarchal system. They attacked on the traditions, they attacked on the relics, they attacked on the legacies of the social customs, which has made the woman just a puppet in the hands of the man, and even the capitalism which has gone to the extent to oppress a woman just as an object. So socialist feminism theory is a little bit detailed and deep to understand. So my opinion or my suggestion to all of you that to go through each and every aspect of the feminism and try to understand from the basic roots. Today, as we have a very shorter time, I have focused on its major tenets, that is race, gender, or the sexuality, or the class. which are the different systems responsible for the women's operation. And the basic attack is on the patriarchy and the capitalism. The woman is seen as a special entity, as a human being, as a liberal and independent personality. And to achieve her status as a liberal, as a free a human being, we have to attack the different social customs. And therefore, the socialist feminism became very much popular a movement among the women and different kind of social reformers. So the second type of feminism is radical feminism. It is kind of extreme form of feminism because it has denied the very existence of man to some extent. There are two different schools of feminism into it. uh, One is cultural and one is libertarian. So the radical feminism having some kind of a clash within itself, and therefore it was not a long run happy movement. It emphasizes the differences between men and women and demands the due respect to the all female as feminine. It deals with the issues of racism and male hierarchy systems. Again, it is going to focus on the capitalism, the social structures, even the class struggle, and even the male hierarchy in each and every walk of life of women. So the emphasis was upon the relationship equality, equality in access to education, breaking down gender roles, typical gender roles in relationships, and it is always believed in eliminating the concept of gender. Gender is a social concept. As you all know, sex is a biological, but the gender or the roles of the gender or the duties of a specific person by its gender is a social activity, and therefore it has attacked on the concept of the gender. Women always looked as a human, as a person, as an independent one. So radical feminism has to be understood again from various points of view, and you have to focus on the libertarian views or the cultural views, which are the two different folds of radical feminism. Then the third feminist view is that ecofeminism. This feminism describes movements that connect feminism with ecology. Emphasis is always upon the exploitation of women along with the environment. Inherent connection between the traditional female roles of nurturing, the fertility or the cooperation, etc., with the nature. So this is something the unique feature of this eco-feminist theory, that there is a strong understanding of the connection between the traditional female roles given by the society of that is nurturing or the fertility or the cooperation with the nature itself, because nature also is nurturing us, is giving birth to the new phenomena all the time, and even it is always exist in cooperation. So the ecofeminism also become a very interesting and a very important kind of a feminism nowadays, and a lot of research is going on into the field. The term was basically coined by the French feminist Francois de Ibone in 1974. So there is a relationship between the nature and the woman, and it is going to underline the sameness between the woman and the nature. Even the exploitation of the nature, exploitation of the women. The different systems and different kind of structures or the deliberate plannings to damage nature or to damage womanhood. Everything is coexisted and everything is studied under this umbrella term, that is eco feminism. Then we will move to the queer theory. It is a kind of a complex theory, and it is an umbrella term for different kind of issues It is not related to only the sex or the gender, but it has covering so many modern, postmodern issues with the gays or lesbian or the bisexual and transgender communities. Uh, the queer theory prominently talks about the sexuality and the sexual issues. It was emerged in 1990s, and it is a slightly different from the feminism because it highlights or it denotes only about the sexual differences among the people. But the people who those are suffering from LGBTQ, the term is used for the lesbians, uh, then the gays, then the bisexual, then the transgender, and the queer. So LGBTQ, all these people also are the subalterns. They are marginalized sections of the society, and this theory is identifying these people, their existence, their importance in the society, and trying to have the equality in the society along with the man and woman, which is a binary kind of entities in the society. So these overlooked or ignorant part of the society also is to come into the mainstream, and it was the aim of the queer theory. So let's move on the next topic, that is post-colonial feminism. Post-colonial, that is after the colonial period. So form of feminism that rose as a response to feminism, which was concerned with experiences of women of Western culture. It originated in 1980s and challenged the universalizing tendencies of feminist studies. The third world feminism or third world women experience or the third world nations or their issues or their problems, because the nations, the lot of or the more or maximum part of the earth of the nations was once upon a time colonized, and the colonized sensibility or the colonized perceptions of the existence of all women is a double entrapment for themselves. And therefore, post-colonial feminism studies the innateness and the socio-cultural factors of the third world feminism. These feminism or these feminists are concerned with the double colonization of the women of the third world, as I told you. The different issues of women regarding class, regarding gender, regarding race in post-colonial feminism is coming with the colonial experience or the legacies of the colonialism. So this is a very interesting school of feminism, and you have to go into the details, or you have to go through some kind of detailed study to understand this feminism from its roots. It's one of the interesting and a very recent kind of school, that is a post-colonial feminism. Uh, uh, Now, very much parallel to this, or going parallel to this feminism, is postmodern feminism. It seeks to deconstruct realism with emphasis on showing the arbitrariness of construction of gender roles. According to this theory, all theory is socially constructed and attempts to criticize dominant order. The postmodern criticism seeks to analyze any notion that have led to gender inequalities, and therefore it stresses upon the plurality and multiplicity. So this postmodern attitude is coming with the post-structuralism, and therefore we need to understand the structuralism, post-structuralism, and then the postmodern attitudes about the gender roles, about the construction of the gender identities or the sexual identities one has to think about. The next school of the feminism also becoming very much interesting, that is psychoanalytic criticism or psychoanalytic feminism. Sorry. Stems from the Freudian theory. As you all know, that Sigmund Freud is known as the father of psychoanalysis or psychoanalytical studies. this feminism has its roots in a Freudian theory. Gender structures and the social systems of male domination are studied with the help of Freudian theory. It explains women's operation as rooted within psychic structures reinforced by the patriarchal system. As we know that we are the part of society, we are part of the family, and therefore the psychological structures are made by this patriarchal system or the social systems, and that has to be studied with the help of psychoanalytical feminism. It remains critical of Freudian notions of women as physically, morally, and psychically inferior to men. Even Freud has not given a status to woman as a human being, as a human being, or he has not treated woman as equal to man. So he also was criticized, and there are so many confusing theories within it. One has to go to the different schools of psychoanalytic feminism, and we have to understand from the psychological point of view, that is Freudian concept, that is Oedipus complex or the Electra complex or the phallocentric attitudes or the penis enviness that we have studied in Freudian understandings, and even the second school that is based on the language, which is by the Jacques Lacan. So that is called the Lacanian school of understanding of psychoanalytical feminism. So how the language also has given the marginality to women, this has to be studied through this Lacanian school of psychoanalytical feminism. There is a lot of things to talk about these different schools of feminism, but as we have a shorter time, I am just rapidly brushing up all the different schools of feminism. Now we are here for the unit number 2, that is of the poems. So there are 6 poems. The first poem, that is Little Red Cap by Carol Ann Duffy. So Carol Ann Duffy, as you all know, that is British poet and even a playwright, and appointed Britain's poet laureate in 2009. She always addressed the issues like oppression, gender, violence in an accessible language that has made them popular in schools. So she had a kind of a craze in her school days also, just because of her poetry matter. So Little Red Cap is the first poem in her 1999 collection, that The World's Wife, which depicts figure from history and mythology through a feminist lens. In Little Red Cap, this figure is Little Red Riding Hood from the classic fairy tale. Though usually portrayed as a naive girl hoodwinked and eaten by a wolf, Duffy's Little Red Cap is a young girl brimming with sexual curiosity, artistic ambition, and personal agency. So this is the beauty of the poem by Carol Ann Duffy, that she has totally differently portrayed this character of a young girl. Her relationship with the wolf, though marked with predatory power imbalances, he serves as a catalyst for her coming of the age. Duffy has transformed the mythological story into a totally modern understanding of woman character in her own capacities and in her own likings and in her own ambitions. So it is a kind of an attempt to understand one's sexual curiosities or the ambitions as like an artist, and the personal agencies. The central character, that is of the girl, is a very strong and confident. So this is the beauty of the poem. So let's see what is there in the poem. There are so many autobiographical elements in the poem. The relationship between the Little Red Cap and the wolf represent Duffy's relationship with the poet Adrian Henry. So the question could be asked on these autobiographical elements in the poem. So you can have this reference for the answer. As pronounced in her poem, the two shared a sexual relationship that they were inspirations for their writings. So this sexual relationship or this sharing is not mere a physical sharing, but it is a sharing of the aspirations and the inspirations. Constant references we find to the literature and the girl's fascination to the literary world. The wolf also represents the world of poems and literature. The wolf was no longer portrayed as a villain in this poem, but rather a valuable and warm-hearted character. So Little Red Cap, that the girl transformed from a foolish young girl to a more independent and clever young adult after her encounter with the wolf and his world. So we need to understand this poem from the different points of views, because the major themes of the poem regarding the girl, regarding the story, are the sexual awakening and the coming age of the girl. So it is a journey towards the maturity. Then the second theme is the artistic coming of age. So as an artist, she wants to flourish. As an artist, she wants to become mature. And the meeting with the wolf, or the 10-year span she spends with the wolf, or the wolf, who is giving a totally different understanding of the literature or the world around her. So this needs to be uh, needs to understand from the different point of view of the gender and the power also. So these are the basic themes are portrayed in the poem, the red cap, the little red cap, and the various symbols are used to meet with the aims, that is of sexual awakening and the gender and power and the artistic coming of age, that is birds, the different woods, then the grandmother's bones, the wood itself, and absolutely books and poetry. The poem has to be understood from the point of view of the girl that who is coming to the artistic maturity with the meeting with the wolf, and this is the poem about the all girls which are coming into age, which are coming into the artistic maturity, and they should have the same journey like the little red cap. So after that, there is a second poem by Imtiaz Dharkar, Parda. It is one of the highly celebrated poems, but we need to understand, we need to read Parda along with Imtiaz Dharkar's other poems, because they all share the same themes or the same perceptions about a Muslim woman. So Parda and Parda 2, Parda 1 and Parda 2 need to be read with honor killing, or prayer, or grace, and battle line. The group of poems are packed with vast immensities. But the Parda, the poem, the name itself suggests that it is a discreet protest and an eloquent criticism of the tradition of strictly sanctioned and imposed on Muslim women, because they are having the different tools for the operation of women. And one of the tool is social custom, social tradition, that is of parda or the parda nashin. So our attention is focused on the turning point in the life of a Muslim girl when she suddenly becomes conscious of her sexual growth. Others are perhaps more conscious about her sexual growth, and therefore the lines come. One day they say she was old enough to learn some shame, and parda is a kind of safety. So students, look at this. These lines are focusing on the typical mindsets of men, that if she's coming into the age, she should learn some kind of a shame, and parda is going to be as one of the tool for her safety. So, how the social customs, how the traditions are giving women a subsidiary, a kind of a marginal position within the family. The conservative society, cautious and unconscious, must teach her some manners, decorums, and dignity for the woman in the parda. And it is said by Imtiaz Dharkar in her poem itself that carefully carrying what we do not own between the thighs, a sense of sin. Parda is a protection against undesirable, vulgar, and wild looks of staring people. So it is a kind of a protection. It is a kind of a safety measure that you should wear a parda, because this is the only mean to safeguard yourself from the staring other people. So it is a wall between the woman and the world. Imtiaz Dharkar notes how superbly, how finely she brings this understanding that the parda is not only the safeguard, but it is a wall which is bifurcating, which is separating a woman, that Muslim girl, from the world. Her mind and memory are stuffed with impressions from other women. Their consciousness of sex and the feeling of sin associated with it grow to a stuffing. So she has to learn from other women about the consciousness of the sex and the feelings. So the feelings about the shame, the feelings about the sex, the feeling about her own identity as a woman. So all the doors opening inward and again inward and reveal her seclusion. So, how Imtiaz Dharkar is looking into the mind of that girl, that inward and inward, inside, she's getting secluded. She's getting into herself and cutting herself off from the outside world. So the poem is a self-examination of the Parda Nashin tradition and also an honest and courageous scrutiny of the whole society outside by Imtiaz Dharkar. The next poem that I will meet you again by Amrita Pritam. The poem is absolutely about love. But first we need to talk about this poem. She is a fantastic writer from Punjabi and Hindi language. And she is highly celebrated one. She published 28 novels and many poetry anthologies. The most prominent woman writer, she is always regarded as of 20th century India, and her words portrayed the bitterness of the partition in 1947, the harsh truths of life of women in India at that time. She was brave enough to stand strong and express her opinions even during a time when the country was going through so many transitions. The poem was published in the Little Magazine 2005, and it is merely, sheerly a love poem, a love thought, and a very, very deep love thought. This poem, written in Punjabi, is possibly the last work of Amrita Pritam. Even she addressed this poem to her partner, who was there for 40 years, and his name is artist Imroz. Though she was in love with Sahib Ludhianavi, that another lyricist, but she finally sharing her deep love towards the companion, towards the partner for her life of 40 years, that is Imroz. It is a poem reflecting the inner desire of the woman to be with her lover forever. And the poem very finely and superbly convinces the reader that she wants to be with only with him of hereafter or the forever. And therefore, the different images are used to fortify this thought that how she would like to come to him through the ray of sun, or turning herself into a spring, or weaving the threads of memories. So these various images beautifully used by Amrita Pritam in the poem uh, I Will Meet You Again. This is a merely a love poem, and you have to understand this poem from the different points of views, that is love, then the companionship, uh, then just as the girl or the lady, as a woman, and her emotional core, her decency, her emotionality, and her companionship with husband or with partner. So these are the various themes explored in this poem by Amrita Pritam. The next poem comes by Audre Lorde, that is Coal. Andrea Lordi, as you all know, that very famous American writer, feminist, uh, then the womanist, librarian, and the civil rights activist. As a poet, she is best known for her technical mastery and emotional expression, as well as her poems that express anger and outrage at civil and social injustices she observed throughout her life. So, her poetry is again an autobiographical series, because she has recorded all her experiences and the social injustices done to her while practicing the different rights. Her poems largely deal with issues related to civil rights and the feminism or the lesbianism, illnesses and disability, and exploration of black female identity. Coal, the poem was released in year 1976. It was then that Lordi was established as an influential voice in the Black arts movement. She became a very prominent voice among the Black artists. The volume includes works from both the First Cities and Cables to Rage. In the title Coal, she asserts and celebrates her color, that is blackness, throughout her poem, and she is very assertive about her own color. This poem is a reflection of Audre Lorde's personal relationship with society and herself as she understands them. Throughout the poem, with the aid of various examples, Lorde suggests that one's true self is not colored, just like a diamond, it shines. So this is the basic and the bottom line of the poem, that as like a diamond shines within the coal itself, she also shines. And the various themes explored in the poem are the self-respect, womanhood, anger towards society, and absolutely the self-identity and self-actuality. Though she is black within the society, though she has suffered from different kind of injustices and the atrocities, but she finds herself like a diamond who shines. The next poem is The Young Sailor, and there is another poem, Cafe 3 AM by Langston Hughes. So, James Mercer Langston Hughes, an American playwright, poet, social activist, novelist, and columnist, and known for his leadership of the Harlem Renaissance. As you know, Harlem Renaissance is all about the Black Renaissance, is about the Black artist. And mainly, Langston Hughes wrote for the queer theory. We already have talked about the queer theory in unit number 1. So the poem Young Sailor is about a sailor who is living for today without giving much attention or thought to the future or even to the past. For this lusty man, money is for spending. A very simple logic is used in the poem. This is a very short poem, but telling so much about the simplicity. And he is the man who is asking for the natural rights, or rights for simple life. And therefore, he says that this lusty man, money is for spending, and wine is for drinking, and women are for loving. So, this young sailor is happy and having strength for self, then no worry he should care for. The young sailor puts no thought into his actions or how they would affect those around him. It does not deal with racial issues at all, but instead talk about various characters in the style of the Whitman. So the young seller talks about the simple natural life and the natural rights. There are so many thoughts, or there are so many understanding about Langston Hughes. He was also called as a bisexual, but no one has given the proof. So the poem could be seen in such manner that there is a portion in the society that they want to live a simple life and they should be allowed to have a simple life, but the society is very cruel. And if the marginal portion of the society is bisexual or a gay or a queer, then they have to suffer a lot. The same theme is explored in the next poem, that is Cafe 3M. How the tensions, how the fear and the terror was spread everywhere. The poem talks about that. The poem deals with the theory of the queer and the society's outlook for the same. In the poem, he uses the term degenerates to address the queer. The poem presents to us an image of the society shaming and hunting the queer. The poem is all about the characters, who those are from the marginalized sections, and how they are called. They are called as degenerated people. Through his addressal of the queer as degenerates, he also suggests the attacking nature of the society towards the queer. Towards the end of the poem, he deliberately poses a question as to who is it that has made them that way. So he is somehow, in a manner, in a way, he is asking the question and making people understand that this is the natural way, this is the simple way, this is the as it is, and we should accept the things as it is. Who made them that way? No one made them that way, but the people were constantly under the terror, even sitting at cafe and around 3 a.m. in the morning, they are suffering from the terror and tensions and the pressures, and society is anytime going to kill them or going to catch them or going to uh, outrage on that. So the poem is talking about the basic human rights. Then the next poem, We Too, How Long We Were Fooled, by Walt Whitman. So Walt Whitman was born in 1819 and he was a volunteer nurse during American Civil War. He was a journalist and a teacher who considered himself a humanist and always celebrated democracy, nature, love, and friendship in his poems. In the poem We Too, How Long We Were Fooled, Walt Whitman are using two characters. And there is a question about these two entities. One is absolutely is poet, but who is the second one? So there is a still research going on that who is that other one. But the critics are saying that the other one is the reader herself or himself. And the major themes in the poem, that love for nature, the ecstasy and the nature, the relationship, and even the sexuality. The poem by the Walt Whitman is telling about the relationship between nature, relationship between the man, woman, and when he talks about two entities, that is man and woman, we can take in that sense also, and how the nature and these two entities are mingled with each other throughout the poem. It is been discussed. Now we are jumping to the unit number 3, that is of dramas. Uh, so let's see the first play, Racing in the Sun by Lauren Hensbury. Racing in the Sun is a play by Lauren Hensbury, debuted on Broadway in 1959, and it transformed the Black experience in drama and was named the best play of 1959 by the New York Drama Critics Circle. It is all about her experiences, at times her writing recognizably autobiographical. She was one of the finest the first playwrights to create realistic portraits of African American life. When A Racing in the Sun opened in March 1959, it met with great praise from white and black audience members alike. Arguably, the first play to portray black characters, themes, and conflicts in a natural and realistic manner. So, the title of the play comes from the Langston Hughes poem Harlem, in which he questions what happens to a dream deferred. So, as we know, the play is talking about the social structures, the outside norms of the society, and the family, which is coming into the play. That is the a younger family, and their disillusionment, or their expectations or their ambitions, their aspirations, how they are meeting to the end, and how the decisions are making the end very fruitful, is shown in the play. The various themes of the play are value and purpose of dreams. The youngest family members, the youngers struggle to attain these dreams throughout the play, and much of their happiness and depression is directly related to their attainment of or a failure to attain that. The need to fight racial discrimination. The play also powerfully demonstrates that the way to deal with the discrimination is to stand up to it and reassert one's dignity in the face of it rather than allow it to pass unchecked. The third thing, that is the importance of the family. The main character, that is Mama, strongly believes in the importance of the family, and she tries to teach this value to her family as she struggles to keep them together and functioning. When they begin to put the family and the family's wishes before their own, they merge their individual dreams with the family's over uh, arcing dreams. The gender and the feminism is one of the important themes of the play. Each of the youngers take a different attitude towards shifting gender rules, and the characters' perspectives shed light on their identities. Benitha's conviction to her modernized worldview highlights her unique brand of strength. Mama and Ruth share more traditional views on marriage and their role as women. Similarly, Walter Lee holds conventional views on gender, and his ability to adequately fulfill his roles as a man greatly affects his self esteem. So, there are so many different characters, and every character is having a dream. So, as we have a very short time, let's move on to the characters, the major characters, as you all have studied. Benitha Younger, then Walter Lee Younger, Joseph Asgai, Carl Lindner, Ruth Younger, Travis Younger, Lena Younger, and George Morshishan. There is a fantastic article by Diana Lizotte, A Racing in the Sun, setting character styles and theme, renegotiate the African American dream. My suggestion to all of you students that to go and visit once this article, you will have the full-fledged understanding. The earlier side is fully based on that note, that is the feminist analysis of the play. Mm. So the play talks about the different aspects of feminism or the feminist understandings. As there is a short time, I would just touch some of them. That is, three generation of women are represented in the play. Uh, Walter's wife Ruth, in her early 30s, she is different from Lena in that she vocalizes her frustration with her spouse. Walter, ultimately, however, she seeks to please him and talking positively about the business to Lena on his behalf. Benitha, a young feminist college student, is the least tolerant of society's unequal treatment and expectations of women. Benitha constantly challenges Walter's chauvinism and has no time for shallow men like George Mushishan, who do not respect her ideas. Through these three women, Hansberry skillfully illustrates how women's ideas about their identity have changed over time. So this play is all about the social customs. The play is about the family, the aspirations, the ambitions, and how the different situations change your aspirations or the ambitions, and how the different characters find their own way Though there is a discrimination, the social discrimination, there is a kind of exploitation, there is a reference to the black and white struggle, how a family has to go through the different kind of tensions and find finally the own happiness and the status in the society or in the structures of the society. The next play is Tara by Mahesh Dattani. He is the only English playwright to be awarded Sahitya Academy Award. So he is one of the prominent English writers of India, and he is not only writer but as an actor, playwright, and director, he is a very celebrated one. All his plays address social issues, not the very obvious ones, but the deep-seated prejudices and problems that the society is usually conditioned to turn away from. It means that the play deals with, his plays deal with gender identity, gender discrimination, and communal tensions, homosexuality, and sexual abuses. It means that he is the writer of the marginal sections of the society. The problems which are never looked or which are never given any kind of a platform. Mahesh Dattani tries to pull out all those issues at surface, and he is making people to see at these issues. Dattani himself mentioned in one of his interviews with Lakshmi Subramaniam that I see Tara as a play about the male self and female self. The male self is being preferred in all cultures. The play is about the separation of self and resultant angst. The play Tara is narrated by Chandan, the male half of the whole of which the other is Tara. Mahesh Dattani has presented the bizarre reality of woman playing second scam to man. It is about the courage and the spirit of handicapped girl child, a Siamese twin born in a Gujarati family. Tara could have survived, but for her mother's decision to give the extra leg to her twin brother Chandan, Tara's mother had allowed a leg to be amputated from her conjoined twin, even though there was a great probability of the survival of the girl. As we all know, the story or the summary of the play, I'm not going into the summary or the story, but we are going to focus the major themes of the play. Gender discrimination is the basic and the most prominent theme in the play, that is gender discrimination, because the play starts with the guilt of the Chandan that he was given the life but not the Tara, though Tara was deserving. Tara was having a lot of chance for the survival rather than the Chandan. Then there is a gender identity crisis also. This theme is a very interesting in this because in this play, uh, who is the villain or who is the victim of the social legacies of the concepts like inferiority complex, and Chandan's mother is one of the victims of this. Sexual marginalization, absolutely, she is always marginalized, and mother-daughter relationship. Even the recent theme, like ancient Eastern culture versus modernity, is also explained in this play. We have to focus on the different characters also to understand the play from different angles. The Chandan, Tara or Bharati, Mr. Patel, who is again a father of Chandan and Tara, and Dr. Thakkar. Dr. Thakkar is very interesting character in the play. You should focus on Dr. Thakkar's character. You will have a different mindset of the society or the people within the society. These kind of people are there in the society, and this is the recent Indian society Mahesh Dattani talks about. So the play is a very tricky one that talks about the marginalized section in every family, that is woman or a girl child. So I'm very thankful to all of you that you listened me, you carefully attended my lecture. Thank you so much for giving this opportunity to BNN College and even to Dr. Sudhir Nikam sir. I must stop here because we have short time and we had a maximum stuff to share with all of you. So thank you once again and best of luck for your exams. Thank you.